Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name is Julie Papura-Hasbach, and I'm the Education and Member Services Manager at the New York Wine and Grape Foundation. We are ecstatic to have you all here today. And I'm even more excited and thrilled to be introducing our next panel, which is going to talk about effective winery leadership and management in a changing environment. I think we, in our panel discussion previously, just learned about a lot of upcoming pros and cons, and we have three outstanding women with a vast wealth of experience and knowledge that I'm ecstatic to have here today. So first, to my left is Shannon Brock. Shannon Brock is thoroughly at home in the role of winery owner / general manager of Silver Thread Vineyard, where every day presents new challenges and opportunities. She and her husband, Paul Brock, have owned Silver Thread Vineyard in the Finger Lakes since 2011. Given the small size of the operation, she takes a hands-on role in every aspect of the business, from pruning, hand harvesting, and bottling to tasting room management, digital marketing, wholesale sales, and business management. Believing strongly in the need for collaboration in the industry, she is on the board of directors of the Finger Lakes Wine Alliance. She is particularly interested in improving the quality of people's wine experiences in tasting rooms and helping to elevate the reputation of New York wines on a global stage. To her left is Liz Stamp. Liz Stamp came to the wine industry by way of association or marriage, as several of us have. She has been involved with a family-owned and operated farm winery since shortly after it began in 1989. A partner and manager at Lakewood, her main responsibilities involve retail and wholesale sales and marketing activities. She has always kept abreast of the technical aspects of the wines Lakewood makes, which is facilitated by the fact that she is married to the winemaker. In her spare time, Liz enjoys horseback riding, jogging, cross-country skiing, spending time with her family, and cooking. Liz and her husband, Chris, the winemaker, live just outside Watkins Glen, New York, and have 3 grown children, Benjamin, who is 30, Abigail, who is 28, and Amelia, 24, and various pets. And they all work at the winery as well?
Not Amelia, but.
Okay, most work at the winery. And then to her left, we have Wendy Oakes Wilson. When Wendy left for college in 1984, she swore she would never work on the family farm, which was then Lynn Oaks Farms, ever again. But when her brother called in 2000 saying he'd like to hire her because of her sales experience and that she wouldn't have to thin peaches anymore, her husband and her move from Miami, why would you ever leave Florida?
We'll go into that. To
Lindenville in 2001. Wendy's job was to increase their direct-to-consumer presence. Her experience in international business helped, but more than anything, she was looking forward to selling something she could be proud of. Wendy is general manager of Lynn Oaks Farms and Leonard Oaks Estate Winery. She is treasurer of Lynn Oaks Farms and president of, sorry if I read that again. She is part of the 3rd generation of the Oaks family to grow and market fruit in the northwestern corner of Orleans County in the greater Niagara region of New York State. And without further ado, thank you ladies for being here today.
Thank you, Julie. Can everyone hear me okay? Oh, okay. How about that? Is that good? Better? Okay. So thank you all for coming to attend this session. It's been really fun working with these 2 colleagues who are also friends, putting this together for you. And before they asked me to lead up this, this session, I had looked at the agenda of BEV New York, and I really wanted to go to the session that's happening next door. So I hope, yeah.
You want us to be quick, is what you're saying.
No, but hopefully someone's taking good notes. But thank you for coming to this one, because we appreciate your interest in the topic. This is, we've divided the hour up into 3 parts. So first of all, it's a really broad topic. When they first asked me about doing this, I thought, like, how could you even address that in 1 hour? And also, how could I address that by myself? Because I have a very small winery, and there's many, many ways of being in the wine industry here in New York State. So I wanted to ask a couple of colleagues to join me on the panel. And we have some things in common, which I'll mention in a minute, but we also have very different wineries in different parts of the state. So hopefully there'll be, no matter where you're coming from, there'll be something that one of us says that you can relate to your situation. So we are all women. We are all winery general managers. And I would say that that is probably, I don't know, like the unsung hero role in the winery. How many of you are general managers? Great, okay. I think it's the most exciting job in the industry because you get to do everything, but it's definitely the job that most people never ever think about. I mean, how many people grow up saying, oh, I want to be a winery general manager when I grow up? It's just not really a career that you know. And I think it's also the role that, you know, people that don't know much about the industry will just kind of look at you and say, so what do you do? I've actually gotten that question a lot, like, because my husband does happen to be the winemaker as well. And people are like, well, what's your role at the winery? It's like, well, just about everything, including the winemaking sometimes. So anyway, all of us are that general manager role. We also all have family-owned wineries and estate wineries where we are a farm operation as well as winemaking and sales. So I think that's interesting. We're each going to give you a brief overview of our personal leadership philosophies. And then what I think is the most interesting part of the presentation, we're each going to describe a strategic decision that our winery has recently made and go through the steps of that process and how that worked out. And then at the conclusion, we're each going to tell you some things that we're thinking about for the future. Like what are some opportunities or concerns that we have about the industry. So maybe if you're not already aware of them, you'll start thinking about them too. So really quickly, we're just going to tell you a few details about our winery so you know where we're coming from. Silver Thread is on the eastern shore of Seneca Lake. It's very small. We have a 10-acre vineyard and we make about 3,000 cases of wine a year. Currently, we sell about 2/3 of that direct to consumer and the remainder in wholesale. So we do have a relationship with a distributor, and but we only wholesale in a few northeastern states. We took over the winery in 2011. We purchased it from Richard Fiegel. So we're like the second generation to run the winery. It was there for 20 years before we owned it, but we did buy it, and we kept the name the same, but we have made a lot of changes to it. The most distinguishing thing about the vineyard that we purchased was it was being farmed organically and had been farmed organically for many years. So that it was very unique in that way. So next I'll have Liz who will tell you a bit about Lakewood.
Oh, okay. Well, as you heard in the bio, I kind of happened into being involved in the wine industry, although I have to admit I always did enjoy alcohol, so that's in a bit of big reach.
Still a thing.
No, I enjoy wine in moderation, of course. But the winery was actually, they started making wine with the grapes from Lakewood Farm in 1988 and then opened the tasting room in June of '89. And while I was present for the opening, I wasn't engaged in the business at that point because my husband and I were living and working in Ohio. We came back or came to the Finger Lakes to live, back for him and my first time living there for me in 1989 after the winery had been open several months, and initially just started helping out part-time. I had a small child, that oldest one, and really, could take him to work with me because everybody else there was his family. And that's sort of how I ended up involved in the wine industry. I have to admit my jobs leading up to that in my life had always been, the jobs I liked the best had been working with people and interacting with people. And I still enjoy that the most about my current job. Although I guess it says general manager, I don't have that on my business card, and I've never thought of myself that way. I consider myself a partner. And as you'll see by the picture, there's a whole bunch of us that work together at Lakewood. And although so different people really kind of manage and oversee different parts of it. And I try to act a little bit of it as a conduit to keep everybody on the same page as far as what's going on. So it's a very different management style because there are a bunch of us. Half of our staff, though, is not related to us technically. We just don't let them know that because, you can treat family well, especially, right? But we're open 7 days a week, and actually our mix of retail to wholesale is pretty similar, about 70-30 retail, 70% is sold retail directly to people through mail order, and about 30% wholesale. Well, unfortunately, we give away a lot of samples, right? But anyway, of what we sell, that's about right. So that's it.
I don't need a mic. For those of you that know me, know that my style is very free-flowing. I am part of the third generation, as we said, and let me get one thing out of the way first. Miami, you don't go out the door for 6 months because it's too hot. Okay, up here, you don't go out the door because it's too cold. So either way, you got 6 months where you're not being sociable. But I am the one that said I would never, ever, 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 did I say never work for this godforsaken family farm again? Because I was the one that wanted to be an international business. I wanted all the opportunities that afforded. I wanted to get out of the small town. And then my father passed away in 1998, and he had been working on the farm since 1951. And my brother calls me and he says, you know, we're having a really hard time selling our products. We need to increase our direct to consumer, because we were apple growers almost exclusively at that point in time. And in 1998, Chinese juice concentrate was allowed in the United States for the first time, and set the floor 8 cents cheaper than what we could even produce it. So we had to find another outlet for our land and our expertise. So my brother, being, let's face it, we all like to drink. It's kind of why we got into this business, you know, see what we could do. My brother in 2003 said, why not? Let's plant some wine grapes. They've never been grown in our particular area before, but we have nice sandy loam soils. We grow weeds really well. So we planted the grapes in 2003, took our first harvest off in 2006, opened the doors May 1st of 2008 with 864 cases of wine, sold through those in less than 6 months. Oh man, we're going. And then we grew too fast. In 2012, what a beautiful harvest that was. So we overpurchased, and we're still recovering from that. And I'm not afraid to say that it was some of our best wine, but some of the hardest to sell, because everybody had a great year that year. So what did we do? Let's go back to our roots. We do apples, steampunk cider, and this is some of the case study that I'll be talking about here. So we celebrated on the farm 100 years last year. So trying to keep the 4th generation involved. 5th generation is now working in the UPIC in the fall. So, but we make a point of saying to any family member, do not do this out of obligation. Do this because you see an opportunity for yourself.
All right, so like I said, the first section, we're each going to tell you, I think going to conferences is always a great time to kind of renew and refresh and get a lot of ideas going into the season. So we're each going to share with you some of our personal leadership philosophy. And I think it's really interesting. I asked everyone to do this separately and then put it together, and we all came up with somewhat similar, but very distinctly different, different thoughts on this. And I think a lot of that stems from the type of businesses that we have. So at Silver Thread, I didn't mention this before, but it's my husband and I, and we have 1 full-time employee and 4 part-time employees, and that's it. So a lot of, like, I have to own a lot of what happens, almost everything that happens. So I don't have a huge group of people that I'm bouncing ideas off and collaborating with on a daily basis at the winery. But for me, one of the most important things is know thyself. This goes back to ancient times, this phrase, but I think you have to really know your business. So as a winery owner, you're constantly being bombarded with opportunities. Sell your wine here, come open a satellite tasting room in downtown Syracuse, come to a wine and chocolate festival in Florida. There's constantly opportunities, whether it coming to you by mail, email, phone calls every day. And it can be really difficult sometimes to weigh, you know, what you should be doing and where you should be going. And I think you have to really know your business and not just do things because you see your neighbors doing them. And I've even had people approach me and say like, oh, well, you know, your neighbors up the road are coming to this festival. We'd really like to see you there too. And it's like, well, my neighbors up the road might be 5 times the size and have 5 times the staff. So just because I see other people doing that doesn't mean that it makes sense for my business. And you really have to, I didn't get that joke, but.
Yes.
So I just think you constantly have to be going back to, I'm a big person on, having a mission statement for your winery and a vision for what you see yourself, what's your purpose, and making sure that every time you're evaluating an opportunity, you go back to that. Another thing I'm really big on is making 5-year plans. I remember first learning about 5-year plans in social studies when we were learning about Mao and China and the 5-year plans. I didn't even know what I'm talking about. And I am not a communist or an authoritarian, but I think it really makes a lot of sense to have sort of this grand plan that you have in the back of your mind at all times. And for us, we're only in our second 5-year plan for Silver Thread, but the first was, we were buying this winery that had a history, but had really sort of, it needed a lot of investment and a lot of reimagination. So our first 5 years was really righting the ship, and whether it came to getting the vineyard and producing at a reasonable level, to getting our name out there and building up our customer list. That was the first 5 years. The second 5 years, which we're almost at the end of, was really our vineyard plan. And as I mentioned earlier, the vineyard was being farmed organically when we first took over, which it wasn't doing well the way that the previous owner was managing it, but we are moving into a new phase. We're 4 years into a new phase of vineyard management called biointensive, which is a new form of organic farming. So that's been our big focus for the past 4 years, and now we're going into our 5th year of that. And I have to start thinking along with Paul, and we've already had some discussions, like, what's our next 5-year plan going to be? What's the next phase? And I think whether your winery's been around for 30 years or 5 years, you need to always keep pushing and keep developing your ideas for what your business is and where it's going. Another very important thing for me is to always check the data first. It can be hard to find time to check the data, but there are lots of times when you have a perception of something happening, and then when you actually go and look at the numbers, that's not really true. And it's very easy to make big decisions that can be wrong decisions if you're not certain that the numbers back that up. And I'll give you an example of that. I have an employee who helps with store tastings at local wine and liquor stores. And we recently went through and did a return on investment for every single store that we did tastings at. So we looked at, how many times we went there, the cost of the bottles and the labor, the cost of everything of doing those store tastings, and then looking at how much that store actually bought over the course of the year. And we were surprised to find out that some of the places that we thought were like some of our best partners actually weren't. And it was really good for us to be able to say, you know what, like this, we have limited resources. We're not going to do store tastings at that store anymore. We're only going to do them during October, November, December, because they're not, they're really not supporting us otherwise. So good example of using data. And then the last one, always tell the truth. And that sounds obvious, but one of my biggest pet peeves about our industry in general is I think there can be a lot of smoke and mirrors and a lot of, a lot of people saying things publicly that just, I know aren't true. So I've always found, whether it's definitely when speaking to my customers, be honest about our wines, where the fruit's coming from, how the wines were made, how our business operates. And I find I have been very successful in retaining good employees. And I think my key to that too is also telling them the truth. Now, there have definitely been times when I've told, sat down with my tasting room people, for instance, and wanted to go through data and things. And I have this one employee, and she was just like, it's nice that you want to tell me all this, but I don't really need to know why. Just tell me what you want me to do. But I usually, when I'm trying to give employees goals or things that we want changed, I always try to explain it. This is why I want you to do this. Not just saying like, okay, now we're going to raise our tasting fees. We need to have a discussion why, so that when they're explaining it to people walking in the tasting room, it's something that actually makes sense. And I think, like in the long run, you just really can't go wrong being honest with people.
And I wish I could say we were great about 5-year plans, because that is really a good idea. We're not. But I have a few things that, as Shannon said, we independently came up with some things that we live by as far as the way we function within our business. And these are certainly, honestly, things I live by. Setting the tone. I think you have to approach your job with a can-do attitude, with passion and commitment. You set the tone for your business and the people you interact with in your business. And if you're negative or you're not behind something, it's as contagious as, you know, well, maybe not coronavirus, but anyway, it's bad. So I'm sorry, that's not really a funny thing, but you do really need to set the tone for your company culture. I think a lot of people have been in situations where, you know, there's someone that's a really good winemaker and they do a great job in the cellar, but they're really not great with people. And so the only way those wineries successfully deal with people are to eliminate that influence on the tasting room staff. And there usually is a very bubbly go-between, that winemaker and their successful tasting room staff, in order to make that work. I feel like it's important in any business. It's hard to always stay upbeat and positive, but I think negativity is just really a bad thing to let spread in your business, and it really can spread quickly. Our business definitely has a team approach, as you saw by that picture and what I mentioned. We operate on consensus quite a bit, and that is not the most efficient way to operate. And while I was sitting here, you know, listening to the first panel and them talking about how you have to move quickly in this current environment, and you're going to have to make changes quickly, and I'm like, oh, that's a tough one for us. But not because we are unwilling to change or we get dug in, but we have a lot of people that have different opinions and all valuable input. When everybody puts a lot into the business, their opinion is important, as well as the person's opinion that's actually maybe interacting with the vendor or, you know, or signing the checks. Other people involved in that business have important input into that. So we do take that team approach. And as I mentioned, it's not necessarily fast, and sometimes it feels like it takes us a long time to get to make those decisions. But I think we always look back and realize the decision is better than it would have been if we pulled the trigger with 2 of us or 3 of us, or just some little part of the group deciding to move forward. I don't ask other people to do things I won't at least try to do, but I have to put, if it has to do with electricity, I don't try to do it. And if it has to do with like deep computer things, I really don't try to do it. You know, trying to get something that's frozen, unfrozen, I'll go there. But I mean, those are areas that I know I really shouldn't touch. Beside that, I really will try to do anything I'm going to ask somebody else to do. And I think that's a great way to have a whole team work together, is that they realize that you're not saying, you need to do this because I won't do that job. I won't clean the bathrooms. I won't whatever. It doesn't mean you have to do it all the time or even frequently, but you need to be willing. When the toilet's clogged up and you're the one that's not pouring wine for someone, you need to go take care of the toilet. And that I think breeds a better team environment in a business like ours, at least, or that's how we've moved forward. And then own your mistakes. None of us are perfect. And this is something that just through life, it's really hard to learn, because we all hate making mistakes and you hate doing things wrong. We all want to please other people. We want to please our customers. We want to be perfect, but none of us are perfect. And if you aren't perfect, just own it and move forward. Don't ignore it. Don't walk away. Deal with it. And we try to have that environment in our winery so that people are more willing to take chances and work outside their comfort zone sometimes. And knowing that they might make a mistake, and making a mistake is acceptable, because you can move on from that and you can fix it and it can all be okay. And I think that's something that we find really hard, especially with our most driven and passionate employees or staff members and family members, is it's hard to own those mistakes because you don't want to do anything wrong. You really want to always do your best for the winery and the people around you. So that's a tough one. And then one thing that I didn't put in here, but I think is important, because she said 4 things and I should have replaced one of these, I guess, is that I think involvement with the outside organizations that help support our industry is incredibly, incredibly valuable. It's something that I've had the privilege and opportunity to do ever since I started working with Lakewood Vineyards, going to meetings along with BEV, and then being encouraged to be involved at different levels with outside organizations. I think one thing, it helps us all develop really great relationships with our winery partners in the region and outside the region, and also see that the world through other people's eyes a little bit more, and realize that just because we do something a certain way isn't the only way to do it, and there might be better ways, or we can just agree to do things differently in some cases. But I think that that's a really important thing, and I would encourage everybody in this room to get involved with one of the outside organizations that supports our industry in the state.
Being from an apple growing family, we'll just call it fruit growing family, and also with the fourth generation involved in it, it really has come to a head over the last 2 years. For us, we had a little bit of a dream sequence that, yes, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Isn't it going to be lovely? We're one of the biggest in the Niagara region. You know, we need to keep doing this, but our retail sales were slumping in a major way. Part of that has to do with the same pie. Part of it has to do is we weren't staying true to what we do best. People know us for apples. People know us for high quality fruit. So we had to get back to that. And that took some soul searching over 2 years with a lot of consultants, which leads me into the final one there that I'll skip to. Be humble enough to know that you don't know everything, that you do need help. And there are people out there, if you're willing to ask for it, to help you, maybe within your family. How many of us have family-owned businesses? Okay, the majority of us. And that's the majority in New York State. Who's a lawyer? Who's an accountant? Who's an HR professional? None of us, but we all have to learn that. Be humble enough to know that you're not gonna know everything, and there are people out there that are willing and able to help you. Don't forget your local demographic. I mean, we laugh about this in the tasting room, but I am literally in Orleans and Niagara counties trying to take Bud Light lime drinkers and turn them into wine drinkers. And when I do that, that's when they start coming back. So how do we do that? We have to have a sweeter, well-made wine. It's not going to be vinifera because they're not going to pay $20 for that bottle of wine. But it can be hybrid, it can be Labrusca, it can be any number of those things as long as it's well-made. Teach them the difference between well-made and just grape juice, okay? We have to be cognizant of that. I mean, 50%, we're at 50% right now between retail and wholesale. We never thought we'd be that high, that low on retail, okay? And grow pensively, not exponentially. Oh man, we were going great guns in the early 2010s. And then all of a sudden, 6 new wineries opened up around us. And they were paying attention to the local public. At the same time, our steampunk cider brand went crazy. At the same time, we didn't have enough apples planted for what that steampunk cider brand was doing for us. Only this next year will we have enough to really go into the wholesale market with that outside of our immediate area. So that's why I say grow pensively, not exponentially, unless you, of course, have somebody that wants to invest $3 million in your business, and then you can do anything you want. But for those of us that are family-run organizations, think that 5-year plan, think how much money will it take? Because if you want the sales to grow themselves, you still got to start with a certain pot of cash. If you don't have that pot of cash, you're going to be chasing that almighty dollar a lot longer than you thought you were. So go with real numbers as to what you can do for your market. I mean, we're lucky. We're right in between Rochester and Buffalo. We're unlucky because we're right in the middle of Rochester and Buffalo. We're 50 miles away from either one. How many people are going to come out from those big areas just to see us? So those are some of the hard questions we had to ask ourselves and say, it's really the local guys that are taking care of us in our region. I have another winery here that is nodding her head excessively because she knows what I'm talking about. It's a lot different in the Finger Lakes where you have that core of people that are visiting you. We don't have that up there yet because if they're coming in from Canada, they love to taste and they never buy because it costs too much to take it back over the border. We get a lot of Canadians. They love the wine, but they don't buy. So how do you work that back in? And there's one other point here. We are going through a 10-year succession plan. The majority of our shareholders are turning 90 this year. So how do you work that out? This is on the farm side. How do you work that out? Because you know that their kids are going to be inheriting a good chunk of the farm stock. 91% of our stock is controlled by people that don't work on the farm. So this is a huge thing for us. I'm in a different, the wine business in New York State is in its infancy. The apple business is not. So I have to think of it in terms of how we appropriately grow so that it's something that people will want to own rather than cash in their chips.
All right, so we're each going to talk about our a decision, and they're all interesting and different. So for Silver Thread, I'm going to talk about how last year we added a VIP seated tasting room to the winery. So we have a really small tasting room. It can only, I think our maximum occupancy is 30 people. So we were at the point where, especially on busy weekends in the fall, I wasn't seeing growth in tasters. And the biggest reason for that is we could not accommodate any more people than were coming in the door. So that there was no way for us to grow our significantly. I mean, a little bit as the wine prices go up, but we needed more space. The other problem was that we have the fastest growing part of our business is our wine club, and wine club members, even though you can have nice events for them on certain days that aren't going to be busy with off the wine trail customers, they're going to come on Columbus Day weekend. They're going to come on Labor Day weekend. And it's horrible when you have these customers that are spending thousands of dollars a year at your winery, and they're standing shoulder to shoulder like this, and you can't really have a nice one-on-one conversation with them. So we actually, we did this with some found space. I had a meeting with Greg McConnell from Farm Credit and to talk about some of the issues we were having. He's a great consultant. And he, you know, I told him how I wanted to, I needed more space, and I had gotten some plans done for an addition, and it was going to cost $300,000, and it just, you know, was a little above and beyond what was reasonable for us to take on at the time. And he said, you know, I think there's a lot you can do with reworking some of the space that you have. So we had this room downstairs that had been used for case storage, and several years before we built a bigger building as a spray shed, and we'd added a case storage room onto that building. So we had this space where that we were using for case storage, but we didn't really need to. So we made an investment in this room. It was significant because we put in these floor to ceiling wine racks for our library collection. We had custom made tables done with local wood from our property, and local. We have that beautiful door you can see that looks out to the outside. So it wasn't inexpensive, but it wasn't $300,000 either. And I can say that it has been working really, really well for us. And it's only been, we're closed in the winter, but we had it open for about 6 months. And the extra revenue that I made by having this room has almost paid for the investment we had to make in the space. So, I mean, it has been an overwhelming success. And it's allowed me to offer a higher price tasting. It's given me space for those special customers. I can show them special wines that cost more, that aren't available to everybody else. I'm able to accommodate groups, which I wasn't ever able to before. And I'm not talking about the bachelorette party groups, but you know, the group that calls you and says, oh, we're part of an American Wine Society group or a wine club, and you know, there's 12 of us, and we want a really special experience. And another really nice thing is I've been able to host wholesale buyers in this space. That wasn't something I had been thinking of when we first put it in, but those people love to come on holiday weekends too. You know, the New York City sounds like, oh, I'm up for Columbus Day weekend. I didn't know it was going to be so busy everywhere. And now all of a sudden I have this, you know, where I used to just dread having them call. Now I'm excited when they call because because I have a space to host them. So, you know, looking back, I first had the idea for this. I went on a trip to Canada with Kim Alaperty and Wendy. And how many years ago was that?
6? Maybe more.
But they all the wineries in Canada had a special space like this where they could take people for a nice seated tasting. It was an upgrade. It usually costs more. And I wanted, as soon as I saw that, I wanted that at Summer There, but I just couldn't figure out how to make it happen. So I'm really happy. It took some creativity, but it's working out. It's working out really well. And I think this year I'm looking at adding something to our website where people can book online. So that'll be kind of the next step for this space is, you know, not just having it, but really advertising it and getting people to reserve it in advance, because it's kind of a different segment of the market, the people that are more plan ahead and looking for that higher end experience.
So this is not going to be a lesson in label redesign because I'm no expert in that, but I'll just tell you how our business went through our label redesign process, which we started in 2014. First, we did ask for help because when you have a team that large and everybody has a lot of different ideas, it's awfully hard to settle on one particular thing that you love. And so we had an outside company that we chose to work with us that was really an expert in label design and marketing. And part of the process was this extensive questionnaire. First, we had to send them our current package, and then they put us through the paces to fill out this questionnaire so they figured out who we were and what we thought our brand should represent. And something very important to us was that we don't feel like we want someone to pick up a bottle of wine of ours in a wine. Well, yes, we do want people to pick up our wine in wine shops, absolutely. But if they do come to visit us, we don't want the experience that they have in our tasting room to be much different than what that bottle projects as far as the kind of people we are, the kind of wine we make. And that to us was like, whoa, what are you talking about? But it is kind of important, I think, that we're genuine. I mean, this whole genuine thing comes up every time I hear any kind of a presentation on selling, and I think it's important in what we do. And it isn't hard. I think most people in this business are pretty genuine. But as Shannon said, you know, sometimes the truth gets stretched and that sort of thing. But anyway, we wanted to make our package genuine and updated. So just to show you the diverse things that were sent to us when we started, and I'm sorry I didn't get these to Shannon in time, but I couldn't scan them. And I wasn't playing with technology well. But these are kind of the initial drafts. So we had these boards that we had to decide what we like the best out of these, which was ridiculous because they're so different. And some of them were easy to say doesn't reflect us at all, but other ones, there were some big differing opinions on them. And so when you see a team like the size of that group that you saw in that picture, okay, the real little ones weren't so involved in the conversation, but pretty much everybody else was. Coming to this conclusion, had to involve more than just the family as well, because we're not in the front pouring wine 100% of the time. We're handling a lot of the back of the house stuff and winemaking and those kinds of things. So we don't have to keep these up, but I just want to give people an idea what we had to work with. I got the one. Oh, yeah, you got the one. Oh, that's the one we chose. So if you think there's a different one, let us know, because we probably need to make a change soon. But we did involve the whole winery staff in. Basically, we had everybody vote on their favorite package of the packages that were presented, or if there was one that they liked, but they thought a combination of a couple of them would be better, we had them include that as well. And so ultimately we chose the package that had consensus or the most support. And what that did is it meant the whole crew that was going to be interacting with our wines and the public was behind the process and involved in the process. They all bought into it and everybody was excited about it and everybody felt good about it. And we even sort of gave teasers to our distributor. I wish I could say that was quite as successful as we would wish it was. but I mean, it was good to build a little buzz, but I think getting the buy-in from first the family has to be behind this, because it's a lot of money when you go through these processes, but also just to get the whole team behind it was really, was really good. And I'm glad we did it that way, because it was tempting to not do it. The more opinions that enter into it, the harder it is to come to a conclusion. But it also, it dragged the process out a little bit, but we had a time limit and we got it done. And I think we made the right choice.
Do you know how it's affected you?
I think, we've actually seen our wholesale tick up, and certainly seen places that weren't interested at all in looking at our products being very open to considering our products, and, some nice placements on wine lists. And we've seen our wholesale trend is definitely moving upward at this point, which I think is a difficult time in that arena right now.
So, as I mentioned before, we started moving more toward cider long about 2014, 2015. And in 2017, two gentlemen that had purchased what was literally an oak barrel factory that serviced the Erie Canal that was built in 1903. They were repurposing this into kind of like a collective space for booze and events. Oh yeah, and a kayak place, because we're right next to the Buffalo River. They approached us because they'd been coming out to us for years for our UPIC operations, saw we were a family operation, liked our customer service, saw that we were really trying to project that kind of, getting to know the family, be a part of it type of feel. So we signed on for this. There was to be shared space in the middle with a shared license, so that people could wander about the building with their drinks. We would build on our branch office permits and add a tavern license. We did that with our farm winery license, put a branch office, then put the tavern license on top of that, so that we could serve not only New York State products, but also ciders from around the world, seeing this as a cider bar. The distillery in the place, the manufacturer there is Lakeward Spirits, and also Pressure Drop Brewing. I don't know if Pressure Drop has made it into the Finger Lakes yet, but it is one of the bigger breweries in Buffalo at this point in time. Very huge wholesale presence. Along with a kombuchery, Snowy Owl Kombuchery, and a bistro. Buffalo's Best Catering opened up a wood-fired pizza oven, along with a full kitchen for the event center upstairs. They made about a $300,000 investment in this place. Our particular space there on the right-hand side is licensed for 60 people. And additionally, we were to be the supplier of wine and cider for the event space, which is 280 people on the second floor, all redone with the original wood flooring, looking down onto the distillery. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Cigar bar up on the rooftop. A really, really neat idea. They repurposed almost everything they could in the building to keep it kind of like a real cool, old style, old First Ward Buffalo kind of feel. That industrial chic kind of thing they had going on. We opened up Bar Cultivar after doing some research into the name in New York State on December 8th, 2018. And on December 19th, 2018, we got a phone call from a winery out in California saying that they had the copyright on the Cultivar name. We had been awarded New York State brand recognition 7 days after they filed for national brand recognition through the trademark. We had to rename it. We fought it for about a year on our own, but as we looked at it, why are we naming it Bar Cultivar? I mean, it's kind of a cool, catchy name, but really it's all about steampunk cider. So this last year we named it to Steampunk Cider Company and Bottle Shop. So what has happened since then? The event space was not fully booked. There's some issues with the ownership of the building because the person running the event space is not a nice person, and she managed to really aggravate mothers of the bride. The common space permits never happened, so we literally have to stop people at the door. Sorry, you can't take that beer out into the hallway. We changed the name, and this is an hour and a half from our home. You know, it is Buffalo. It is in a burgeoning center of Buffalo. At the same time, 2 other places just like this opened up in Buffalo, along with 5 distilleries and I think 13 breweries within this 2 years to get this going. It's the same pie. Buffalonians drink a lot, don't get me wrong, okay? But it's the same pie, we're just dividing it up even further. And there's some great adult beverages happening in Buffalo. It is an incredible scene, but it never really did what we thought it would do. And because it's an hour and a half away from home, our first manager recognized that, and it wasn't until our tasting room manager at the winery went up there one night and figured out the reason that our sales were so low is because anything that was done in cash went right into the manager's pocket. So talk about naivete. We changed that manager in August, have an amazing woman there. We don't know how much longer it's going to last. The 2 owners of the building are now in court together. We had nothing to do with any of that stuff, but the reason and Shannon asked me about this, the idea behind it was fantastic. I mean, imagine a shared space. They're going to buy a bunch of wine and cider from us wholesale. We are the sole supplier of those things for the business they do on events. You know, it was a great, great idea. Well, within 3 weeks of us opening, they brought in Labatt Blue, Bud Light, and California wines into the event center. So it hasn't been what it promised. And of course, you can't put this in writing. It's a gentleman's agreement. I learned an awful lot. I thought I could judge people, you know, from meeting them, a real handshake. You know, this guy had made a ton of money selling electronics. His main office was in Vienna, Austria. So he knew what he was doing on that type of thing, but he really didn't know what he was doing for booze and event centers. We learned a lot. It's been a very, very painful experience. And that's why I harp on that. Be humble enough to ask for help. This has been a huge learning experience for us. Being farmers ourselves, you know, we always rely on a handshake is worth it. And we thought we could do this with this guy. And it's been our own little, we're finally making money, you know, but it's been a very difficult time getting there. So, yeah, are we running short on time?
We're getting, well, no, we're about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to go really quickly through what we're looking at in the future, so then we have time for questions. So I just put it out to everyone on the panel, like, what are some things you're thinking about going forward? I'm thinking a lot about the natural wine movement and the idea of wine purity. I find it fascinating that people are drinking hard seltzer because they think it's healthy when, you know, it has an ingredient list. I don't know exactly what it's made out of, but I really feel like we're in a position, especially our winery, but Finger Lakes wines in general, we're making these very pure, low alcohol wines. So why shouldn't we be owning that? And really kind of finding a way to take what we're already doing and present it in a way that's appealing to this segment of the market. I am thinking a lot about wine pricing. I know I need to increase the price of my wines because costs of everything are going up. And also I think with the way that we're farming that's more expensive. So we need to increase them. I was also just in New York City over the weekend and went to a couple amazing restaurants that are really interested in our wine, but our wine is too cheap for their wine lists. And I don't know if other people have had that problem, but there it is. So I know I would like to increase pricing. I've got to figure out how much. I'm also thinking about the post-wine club world. I've read a few interesting articles just saying that now that people are ordering everything on their phones and through Amazon, and just that that it's possible that wine clubs will like run their course. And that's concerning to me because that's the fastest growing part of our business. So I just want to be ready so that if wine clubs become less popular or if what people are looking for in wine clubs is changing, then I'm ready for that. And then also I know I need to do a better job with digital marketing, targeting customers, and kind of segmenting my list and helping, getting the right information out to the right people.
So my observations, or what I'm looking at moving forward, is at first point is basically just responding to the different expectation that the people that we're seeing in our tasting room have. It's a different clientele. I can say the M word or not say the M word, but it's definitely, which would be millennials. It's definitely, there's a different expectation with that generation, and we need to figure out a way to monetize that. We give a quality experience, and you don't get the same ROI on that you did with a baby boomer or a Gen Xer. And so how are we going to make that work in our business model or adjust our model, still staying true to ourselves? We don't want to make our business something that we don't like to go to every day because we don't like the way we have to do business to suit the customer. So we got to somehow put that puzzle together a little bit better. We've been making tweaks, and so far so good. As far as including the next generation in the decision making, and I think we've done that. But being cognizant of that, I think, is really important. And then from a just day-to-day thing, being better about having manuals of policies and procedures for just the basic stuff, so anybody can step in and start doing those things if it's necessary, or just the filings that you have to do every year. I mean, really, the person that handles it knows how to do it, but the other people might not know how to do it. If that person can't do it in time because they're away for whatever reason, we need to get those things done. So I think that's one of those things. It's tedious, it's annoying, but it's really good to have that in place and keep working toward that and keep it updated.
For us up in that region, we have two large areas that we can market to, both Rochester and Buffalo. Buffalo is our main market. But as I said before, Buffalo it's the same pie, okay? We're not inventing new drinkers, but what we have to do is stay relevant to industry trends, and we can do that with cider. We have our own cold storage, we have our own press. We can turn something around in 45 days, similar to a brewery. So that's what we're looking to be happening after this year's harvest. We need to develop a relationship with a distributor. We are self-distributed at this point in time. This next year, we will have enough of the base apples that will go into this to really have a presence outside of Buffalo. But we are negotiating with them a percentage over time. It's all about economies of scale, especially in the cider market, because it is a cheaper market than the wine market, and it is going towards cans. It also, we don't have to give up 50% in the cider market, which is a beautiful thing. I don't want to tell you all to get into the cider because of that, but I can help you with your base cider needs if you so desire. Which is the next thing, develop relationships with other small producers to be their go-to cider manufacturer. This does not mean hard cider. This means the sweet cider, the base product. We have apples available all year long because we have our own packing line. We deliver apples to 90 locations between Western and Central New York. So we have a constant flow of juice apples. So you can come to us at any time of the year and we can produce for you, which is really cool. And go back to our roots, be the place that the locals want to be. We started a music series on Wednesday nights, and last year it was extraordinarily successful, getting local bands in. Wednesday night is a night that not too many people have plans. You do it between 6 and 9 o'clock. People are still getting home in time to go to bed and still be at work the next day. Everybody has plans on the weekends. But by doing this during the week, we don't get any ideas, Kathy. By doing this during the week, we also got the bands cheaper. So I hate the term think out of the box, but really going forward, it's what you can do to get that slice of the pie and keep people coming back and be in their minds. We are in a good place logistically, but we're also in a difficult place logistically because we do have to travel an hour to get anywhere, and people have to travel an hour to get to us. We're not surrounded immediately by a bunch of other places either. So wholesale will still continue to be a big part of our business, but let's be realistic. I mean, being the community that we live in, we've been there 100 years and we got to take care of our peeps. So.
Thank you, ladies. I think we have maybe time for a question or two. Does anybody have any questions?
Question for Shannon. I'm so interested in your VIP tasting room. Our 2 to 5 year plan is for VIP tasting rooms where we currently have case storage. So I was wondering, A, what you charge for that, and B, if it's equipment only, or if you take like on a busy Saturday, if people come in, do you say, oh, you can upgrade your tasting experience to come into this room?
So great questions. It's stuff that I'm working on. So right now I'm doing both. I'm doing reservations, and I also last year during the summer and fall, I had times on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday where we just advertised that it's going to be open for walk-ins. And that usually worked out pretty well, but we're still kind of getting the feel of what's going to work best. I would like to have it be more reservation, but I don't want to. I know one of the things that came out of the Wine Grape Foundation study is that they did last year is that people like that you don't need reservations in the Finger Lakes. That's a big selling point of our region. So I'd like to try and make it so that it can be both to some extent, but ask me again in a year and I might have a different answer.
And what do you charge?
Oh, so right now I'm charging $20, and it's funny because sometimes people are like, "Oh, that's a lot," and sometimes I've had lots of people say, "That's it? That's so cheap for what it is." So I think that speaks to the diversity of consumers that we have. I do offer 2 free per year to people who are in my club, so it's like a perk of club membership to do a tasting there. Yeah, so 20 for now, but maybe going up.
Do you provide some food or something?
Just a little bit, like a little plate with some cheese, and I use the Stony Brook pepitas, and yeah, not a lot of food. We don't have room for that.
What is the capacity?
Oh, mine is 16. And the reason for that is because we had an architect look at the space, and that was the maximum he could fit into that square footage. But also I work with Experience the Finger Lakes, and Laura Winterfolk is here, and also her maximum size is 14. So it was really important for me to make sure I could fit at least 14.
All right, one last question. Go ahead.
I have just a general panel question about flying under the radar. As a small winery that is me, my dad, and 2 full-time employees, and then part-time employees, it's a lot. We have all the capacity in the world to grow. We actually don't make enough wine to meet our own needs, and we could produce a lot more. But it's really safe to fly under the radar because you don't have to deal with ice. You're not under this, well, you do to a certain extent, but you're not under the scrutiny of the ADA quite as much. You don't have health inspectors coming around quite as much. So there is this kind of feeling of fear growing too big and having to take on a consultant, and a marketing person and a lawyer and all these other jobs that you are currently doing on your own that you have to outsource because we're not, we're not experts in law and we're not experts in litigation. So growing also takes on a lot of risks because you're not flying under the radar anymore.
Participate in stuff like this, and don't be afraid to ask the questions of the people that have been through it. Because I don't know, I'm an open book, learn from the mistakes that we've made, and there's been plenty, because I learn from them every day, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. We all have to work together to really make this a place, a destination for people, for both wanting to come and then look for it later.
Right, and there's also an old guard that says, why grow? Why not just we're doing great, why not just keep it as is? There's a little bit of resistance to trying new things or building your business or growing in any way just because.
Old guard in your business?
Yeah.
Okay.
Generational.
Talk to me about that. Yeah.
If everybody could join me in a big applause of appreciation for Shannon and Liz and Wendy. We do have a 15-minute break, so we'll be back by 11:20-ish. And I'm sure these lovely ladies would be here for a couple minutes if you had a remaining question. Thank you, everybody. The next session in here is identifying and selling to your target audiences, just so you know. You were all phenomenal. Thanks. Thank you for coming. Are you guys all leaving now?
No.
No.
Okay, we're gonna be right back. We have to, I think, gifts for you
Oh,
before you leave. Will you be here for
Well,
lunch?
of course we're gonna stay.
Okay.
We don't pass up food. I mean, I'm gonna raise you.
Oh, you can move it back now.
All right,
I
thank
hope
you.
that didn't like
No.
screw things up
Was
too much.
interested in that.
Not at all.